Namaste and good evening. This is Sujeev Shakya. Today I'll be moderating this panel on driving growth of SMEs through fintechs. And with me today we have a very nice panel with us. We have Amit Agrawal, co-founder and director of Khalti. We have Mr. Anil Shah, Nabil Bank. We have Jagannath Podel from program manager from Federation of Nepal Cottage and Small Industries. We have Shrishti Joshi, chairman of SABAH, SAARC Business Association of Home-Based Workers. So thank you, UNCDF, for having us all in here. And my job is a glorified timekeeper. I'll ensure that this session ends on time. That's what, as an accountant, I'm supposed to do. We have 4 speakers and a lot of things to say. So basically, we would have about, sort of 10 to 12 minutes per speaker, which means we can have around 3 to 4 rounds. We will go conversational style, and we would ensure that there would be no speeches. And if you would cross your 3 to 4 minute mark, then I may just be very rude to cut you off. So I will keep an eye on the chat box. If there are some questions that are coming, I would definitely bring it up. And I will also take liberty of using first name with my panelist. So with that, may I just, sort of set the stage. We are talking about MSMEs. We are an area that has been hit very hard post the COVID-19 pandemic. But at the same time, we've seen, on the other hand, fintech has really innovated. Who had thought 1 year ago that we would be, sitting like this in a chat room and talking about various issues, and we have audiences around the world. And from physical meetings, things have gone virtual. A lot of things have happened. And it's very interesting to hear diverse perspectives from different players. Today, we have someone who is running a fintech company. We have somebody who's got some deep experiences with the banking industry. We have representation from the cottage and small industries, and we have representation from home-based workers. A wonderful, stellar panel, and stay tuned for interesting conversations. So let me start with first alphabetical order, Amit Agrawal. And maybe the first round, it would be good to just talk about what do you do, what does your company do, and also what has been some of the challenges you've seen and the opportunities during this pandemic. Amit, over to you. Amit, you're not being audible.
I was mute. Thank you, Sujeev ji, once again, and very glad to be here in this session. I work for Khalti. Khalti is a digital wallet, so basically a mobile money solution, but it's not limited to a wallet. So broadly, we are a fintech company which develops other types of financial technology solutions. And this pandemic, there's something an eye opener for us. We saw a very big change in our use cases and the products. We'll get into detail about that very soon, maybe in a couple of minutes. All that I would like to say that people who didn't trust us like before the pandemic, people who didn't ever feel the need of using a mobile money solution, or people who thought that mobile money will not be a part of their life, everything changed during this pandemic, and we saw a 300% growth in Khalti in past few months. Yeah.
Thanks, Amit. Maybe I'll move on to our next speaker, Anil. I know you are synonymous to banking in Nepal, but how do you see the SME, MSMEs in from a banker's perspective? I think just to set the stage, Anil.
Thank you, Sujeev, for that. I'm glad that Amit is here as well, because as he rightfully said, from the start of this pandemic to now, the whole paradigm has changed in terms of fintech, in terms of banking, in terms of what MSMEs and SMEs have to do. I've always believed in most countries, and definitely true in Nepal, MSMEs and SMEs are the backbone of the economy. while the big national corporates and multinationals that operate in Nepal is the face that we see of the economy, the MSMEs and SMEs are actually the backbone that keeps things ticking. Because regardless of when we were in a revolution or when we were having bunds and all sorts of power shortages and all sorts of things, while the large corporations had a lot of problems dealing with this, and many times they were shut for long periods of times, the SMEs, the mom and pop shops, the little manufacturing units, the restaurants, they were all open. And if you look at Nepal, in any city that you go to, and a friend of mine said it many years ago, he said, you're a country of SMEs and MSMEs. And I said, why? He said, because under every house, there is a business. This is not true in most other countries, but if you look in any city, any town, any village in Nepal, under every house, there is a business. Kirana pasal, a little kirana pasal, a momo shop, a motorcycle repair shop. I don't know what it is, but it's always there. And regardless of whether we're having 18 hours power shortage, whether we are having a revolution to change the fundamentals of the country, these businesses are up and running. And guess what? This pandemic, for once, even after the earthquake, we saw them up and running. But the pandemic, for once, has really put them in a very, very difficult position. And banks, the central bank, the finance ministry, with waivers in interest rates, with reduction in interest rates, postponement of payments, so on and so forth, we are trying to help. But when we talk to our SME and MSME clients and we say, look, we've told you, you don't have to pay, you need to pay only after 6 months, your interest rate has been reduced and all, they say, no, Anil, what are you talking about? We're not even thinking about the bank now. That is not the sort of rahat that we are looking for at this point of time. My major problem is, how do I pay the rent? How do I pay my 5, 10, 15 workers? This is my major problem. My problem is not paying the bank loan at this point of time, but the MSME space, which is the backbone of our country. We have to focus on reviving this. And unfortunately, I see a lot of talk, because the big corporations have the loudest voices. We see a lot of talk of the big corporations and the big national corporates speaking about what they require. But the small voice of the MSMEs, because each voice is small, but put together in terms of employment, in terms of contribution to the formal and informal economy, the MSMEs and SMEs, as a banker who's been doing this for decades and decades, let me tell you, the MSMEs and SMEs is what keeps our economy ticking. And we have to, at this point of time, identify what is it that they require. And let me tell you yet again, it is not only the reduction of bank interest rates and the postponement of repayments of installments isn't going to cut it. They need more help of a different sort. And at this point of time, we all need to sit together and see how do we give them the space. And if we give them the space, they will bounce back. That resilience in the MSME and SME that I've seen over the years is phenomenal. But at this point, if they don't get the space, it is going to be very difficult for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. That's a good way to set the stage, and I think very important. Yeah, we also in our researches we've seen that MSMEs in Nepal really dominate the private sector landscape, and their voices, there's very little of that voice that's been heard. Let me now move on to Jagannath, who is got the sort of works with the Federation of Nepal Cottage and Small Industries. So maybe Jagannath can also give us an overview. We heard what Anil said from a banker's perspective. We would love to hear, Jagannath, what do you look at an overview of the MSME world in Nepal? Over to you, Jagannath.
Thank you, Sujeev. Yes, Anil already told that MSME has the backbone of the Nepalese economy. Yes, it is. Data also said that MSME has big contributions to the national economy. GDP, if you talk about the GDP, the latest data shows that MSME contributes 22% in national GDP. And while you talking, if you talk about the numbers of total industries, MSME shares almost 90% in total industrial arena. So here, according to the economic census taken in Nepal in 2018, that is the first census, economic census, it said that there are 923,356 industries, including large industries. So MSMEs are 921,573. So it said that it means that, and it also contributes in employment in what in big amount, big ratio. So there are almost 3.2 million employments from the industry sectors, and MSME shares 2.7 million in employment generation. So here, if you talk about the what is MSME sectors, so unlike other countries, Nepal has definitions, different definitions like micro, cottage, small and medium industry, medium and large industries. So if you talk about the what investment, it has what from the local rural area to cities, it has big investments, and now mainly from the remittance. If we the peoples who are using the remittance also, who are getting the remittance also using in this sector. So this is the overall overview and of the MSME in Nepal.
Thank you, Jagannath. That's good to hear about the numbers. Yes, it is a large number we are talking about in terms of the number of MSMEs in Nepal. We would go to our final speaker, Shrishti Joshi, who is the chairperson of SABAH, and maybe she can introduce SABAH a bit, and as a segment of home workers that have been impacted a lot during COVID, maybe she can share her perspective. Shrishti, over to you.
Thank you, Sujeev. First of all, it's a privilege to be here, and I want to thank UNCDF and Singapore FinTech Festival for having me in this panel. Well, talking about SABAH, before I do that, I want to give you a little overview of who home-based workers are. There are 290 million home-based workers globally, and these are not domestic workers, these are home-based workers, and over 61 million in Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Pakistan collectively. And 95% of these home-based workers are women. And in SABAH stands for SAARC Business Association of Home-Based Workers. We were initiated as a project back in 2009 in all SAARC countries, but we've come a long way because we took it as a movement to organize and network and empower our women home-based workers economically. We are spread in 26 districts of Nepal. We have 3,939 home-based workers with us. Having said that, although we are a big population there, we are still invisible and voiceless. We are financially poor and marginalized. And home-based workers are not counted in national economics accounting system as contributors, and neither are they recognized as a vulnerable group. So what that does is we are left without any humanitarian assistance when catastrophes happen. And to boil down to the COVID-19 pandemic's statistics, it's been most devastating because the women home-based workers are hit the hardest. And during this period, after the lockdown started, their job orders were cancelled, their payments were stalled, and they were overburdened with unpaid care work at home. And we have to remember that their home is also their workplace. So they were also faced, unfortunately, domestic violence. So we in fact had a study launched only yesterday by HomeNet South Asia, where impact of COVID-19 on women home-based workers in South Asia was revealed. And in a nutshell, what it did show, the study showed us that 75% of the women home-based workers reported a total loss of income, and over 80% had depleted their savings and had to borrow money to survive. So we have no choice but to look into new markets and tap alternative supply chains to strengthen the livelihoods of women home-based workers. And we also fear that hunger is the next pandemic. And, after any catastrophe, we've seen that women home-based workers, they have always shown how resilient they are, how strong they are, but that doesn't mean that they don't need any help. They were out there, in the first week of lockdown, instead of weaving the Dhaka apparel that we are into, they were busy making masks and protective gears for the public at large. So that's our home-based workers. We always strive to turn our challenge, any challenge into opportunity, and COVID-19 hasn't been an exceptional one. Thank you.
Thanks, Shrishti. Very interesting perspective. And maybe I'll move on to, I would start with Shrishti in the second round, is to really, because you talked about opportunity, you talked about resilience. How has been the adaptation of digital finance? Is there been, a lot of people have leapfrogged during these 9 months, and especially in many countries. I'm currently here in Kigali, Rwanda. We've seen how mobile money has gone into deep, penetrated deeply into villages. Do you see, Shrishti, to start with, within the home-based workers, do you see the adoption of digital finance? Do you see the adoption of technology, using of different, selling through e-commerce platforms? Has that happened? Or is there the more tendency, like in Nepal, we see that we are into problem and we should get some support and we should have some finance coming in? It'll be good to, get your perspective. Shrishti, over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, as I said, we have tried to change this challenge into opportunity, and it was very difficult. It was very difficult, but luckily, we have Amit here, Khalti is here. We had partnered with Khalti long time before the pandemic, and we were able to, put our home-based workers on board comparatively smoothly, after the COVID-19 struck. But we do realize that there is a need to be digitally literate, and that is the survival strategy of the new normal. And what we have been able to do is we are connected with the leaders. We have 53 clusters in 23 districts. So what we have been doing is we have been connecting with the leaders and all the home-based workers who have the access of mobile phones. We have been conducting Zoom calls and trying to get their perspectives, especially after the lockdown started, how they were surviving, what we could get to them. Even the relief work that we did, it was thanks to the technology, because otherwise we would have been really cut off from our home-based workers. And in the region itself, what we are also trying to do is connect with Amazon and GoCop to help our home-based workers, sell their products beyond borders. That's another thing that we have done. And additional 400 members from SABAH, Nepal, they have benefited from an app called Mero Parcel, which we were able to collaborate with the UN Women Nepal and NCEL. So we have been able to, they can take photos of their products, upload it themselves. So that kind of digital literacy has been there. But again, access to finance is a big challenge, because we haven't had the chance to really take finance without any collateral, or they are credit worthy, but how do we access that finance? That is a big challenge. And I'm very glad we have Anil Dai here as a panelist, and I'm sure we can brainstorm. We can have a win-win situation if you all put our heads together to bring the people who are left behind to the forefront. And as SDG always says, we should not leave anyone behind, and 2030 is not too far away. So I am looking at fintech in a different way. It should be accessible and it should be affordable, because we don't have the resources. We wish we could make all the women home-based workers carry a smartphone, but we don't have the resources. But with all the fintech companies out there who want to support this kind of a movement that's going on in the grassroots, I think it's high time we put our synergy together. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so optimistic and so positive. So I think since you mentioned Anil, so let me go to Anil. I know Nabil launched a slew of digital products, finance, digital banking products during this pandemic. So how do you see, the linkages between digital finance and, MSMEs? And picking up on where Shrishti was talking about, we have some great payment solutions that have come up. Khalti is there, many others are there. Do you see this also moving towards the lending, the other side of operations where you can get access to finance, because we are, in some of the countries we are working, we are seeing that movement taking place, especially places like Cambodia. Do you see that where you can also access, sort of credit and without collaterals? Do you see that on a digital platform, peer-to-peer lending, those things? So maybe two key issues, Anil, in terms of your own experience on how you've been doing digital banking work during this pandemic, and any opportunities on, sort of revolutionizing the access to finance world. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone, the key words that have come out of this pandemic, one is lockdown, one is social distancing, and the other is digitization. And the positive one of this is the digitization. And let me give you an example. I mean, Sujeev, you're in Africa right now, but for years, everyone used to give us the example of M-Paisa in Kenya and say, why don't you have an app like M-Paisa in Nepal? Everyone in Kenya uses M-Paisa and so on and so forth. When we did a little bit of a deep dive into the success story of M-Paisa, we found, because we all had apps as well, and there was no uptake of these apps in Nepal, we found that the reason that there was such high penetration of the app M-Paisa in Kenya was crime. One of the primary reasons was crime rates were quite high and people didn't want to deal with money, and so they wanted to deal with M-Paisa, and slowly they got used to it, and once they got used to it, they never wanted to go back to using cash. For us, it's not crime, it's COVID. So, for instance, Nabil Bank has had our Nabil Smart Bank app. We've had the ability to open accounts online, do all sorts of things, but it's not a question of the bank being digitized. For digitization, we need an ecosystem. We need the Khaltis of the world. We need the SABAHs of the world to say we want to go digital as well. Just because we have the goods in the shop, no one came to buy before this. But now the uptake has been phenomenal. And looking at this, Nabil Bank has set up a vertical called Nabil Digi Bank, a bank within a bank, which is our digital outlook internally in the bank as well as externally. We've already launched a slew of products from EAT Nabil, which is for corporate banking, to GenN, which is an account you can open completely online, to again looking for partnerships. So one of the things we did is we partnered with Daraz, which is another, which is the Alibaba of Nepal, their branch in Nepal for selling. And they have the whole network of SMEs who sell through them. And we saw, okay, now that we sell through them, digitization is not only payment, it's data. And now we're realizing the value of data. So once there's this whole lot of SMEs that are selling through Daraz, we said, we know how much their sales is, what is their turnover, so on and so forth. So let us offer them loan products as well, to say that we will give you special loans if you are in the ecosystem of Daraz, or if you join the ecosystem of Daraz. Why do you have to be part of Daraz? Because then we can tap your cash flows, and then we know what sort of financing you can actually sustain. Because not having money is bad, but having too much money is even worse in the case of SMEs and MSMEs. Along with that, we also partnered with One to Watch, who have a fund whereby collateral less, Shrishti, maybe you want to approach One to Watch. We are now partnered with them to give collateral-free lending up to 10 to 15 lakhs, maybe a little more even to that per person. And it's completely collateral-free. You just have to have a good business case, which you all already do because you have a great network, you have, whatever it is. And it's not only financing. One to Watch also gives trainings on how to run a business, cash flow management, accounting, so on and so forth. But now what we are seeing at this point of time is digital has come to age in Nepal. And it is not only now during the pandemic or during the lockdown, we need to ensure, by we meaning people like ourselves, Amit ji, and all of us involved in the ecosystem, including Shrishti ji and everybody, to ensure that we move in terms of a sustainable digitization going forward as well. It's like ATMs. We don't only use ATMs when the branch is closed. Those of us who use ATMs all the time. We never go to the branch, or we use our debit card to make purchases all the time, not only when the branch is closed. Now we need to make digitization part of the new normal. And we see this happening. In my house itself, I mean, me, my spouse, we used to go and shop, for vegetables, medicines, day-to-day, everything. Now nobody goes anywhere. Everything is delivered. And the amazing part, and my wife keeps telling me this, is the innovation and entrepreneurship of the youth of Nepal, not people of my age, but the youth of Nepal. Now, whether I want curd or I want medicine or I want anything, there's someone willing to bring it to my house. And the payment can be made, through QR code, through account-to-account transfer, through card, whatever you choose, you can make the payment. If you say cash, they will be a bit, can we do some other payment, please? Because it's a problem for them in terms of accounting, reconciliation, all sorts of things. So they don't want to take cash also. The people don't want to pay cash also. I want to end by saying, what is my vision? Nabil Bank's vision for digitization is this. The person who is selling vegetables on a cycle or fruits on a cycle has an ID card around his neck with his or her picture with a QR code underneath it. The person who comes to buy the oranges or the apples, looks at the oranges, apples, bargains, it says, okay, it's 252 rupees, will take out their phone and zap the QR code. Their account is debited. The vegetable or fruit seller's account is credited. This happens throughout the day. On the way home, the fruit seller goes to the Kirana Pasal, where they buy rice and dal and tail for their day-to-day needs. He takes out his phone and does a QR code and does the payment and goes home. The next day, when his wife goes to drop the kids at school to pay the school fees, she does the same thing with a QR code. That is digitization in Nepal. Digitization doesn't only mean doing it for the urban youth, the educated people. It has to populate down to the bottom of the pyramid. Where hard bazaars that happen weekly in the chicken and buffaloes and the vegetables and fruits and all, where instead of doing cash deals, where over there people are doing with their phones. Today only I read some data that said, the phone penetration in Nepal is phenomenal because of diaspora. Every household has one person, if not two people living abroad. So they have these phones so that they can communicate with them and talk to them. So that investment has been made by a large percentage. 80% of the women in Nepal also have phones, I've heard. And because of our northern neighbor and the cost-effective phones that come into our country, everybody can afford a phone. So the hardware is not a problem. Yes, there may be some pockets where it is a problem, but in the majority of cases, the hardware is there already. There's Amit ji and his team making softwares for payments models. There are banks at the back end doing it. And now we have the ecosystem of entrepreneurs who are saying, you want a pizza? Let's do it digital. You want your insulin medicine? Let's do it digital. So we are now primed to take off on the digital space. And I think this is going to be the catalyst that is going to boom the MSME and SMEs also. Because now their market is not only their neighborhood where people used to come and buy, but now their market is not only Kathmandu or the country, but what I would like to end by saying is Nepal Rashtra Bank has been proactive as well. They've just allowed online payments. They've just allowed for certain amounts of money for to do it digitally, internally and externally also. And this is a move in the right direction, I think, from our regulators as well. So everything is set. Now the actual the time pasina bagaune ra buddhi chalaune, that time has come for the banks, the financial sector, for the fintech companies to make sure that we have the products and services that our customers want. And if we are able to do that, I think now the Nepali customer is ready to actually, and has already moved towards digital and is ready to move more and more towards it in the days ahead as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. That is, few important messages coming out. One is that Nepal's adaptation to digitization, it's amazing. We have seen in the sort of space around videos, and we have been saying around content marketing. We've been doing some work around that. It's amazing to see what's happening. And I think it's a country with 50% of the people under 25 and 70% under 35. And Anil, you may not be young, but you are a youth icon, and you've been inspiring a lot of young people to do these things, and it's amazing. So I would move on to Jagannath to talk about, when we are talking about MSMEs during this pandemic, do you see that there is a sense of being ready to jump into this digital bandwagon, or is there that sense of reluctance? There are challenges, but we have seen, as Anil was pointing out, and as also Shrishti was talking about, various transformations that have happened during this past sort of 9 months. Do you see the MSMEs looking at it positively in terms of they would want to get into the digital bandwagon, do want to look at digital payment solutions? Do you see that, or there is that sense of reluctance? So how have you viewed amongst your members and for someone who is looking very deeply into the MSME sector? Jagannath, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sujeev, once again. So MSMEs, if you talk about the MSMEs, and it's about the pandemic. In the pandemic, MSMEs obviously jump into this fintech, financial and technology. So in this sense, we can say that they are very readily they are not very ready to go in this process, because most of the MSMEs are scattered all around the country, in the corner, in the remote area also. So they do not have this educations of how to use digital. They don't have the concept and educations about the fintech, financial technology. So most of them lack this knowledge. So how to access the finance through technology, because most of the banks, microfinance institutions have the catchment area in cities and urban area. So in this perspective, so we say that most of the MSMEs haven't applied the word this financial technology in their industrial level. So but this pandemic has taught us the many things, that MSMEs should go into the this process also. But at the same time, so MSMEs look towards the government and the financial institutions, and as well as this financial technology service providers like Khalti. So we have to sit together on the same platform and make some strategy, so that all these MSMEs who are left behind can have access to this financial technology. Only then what they can be benefited. So we yes, it has taught us, this pandemic has taught us to how we can make them aware and make them educated, and then technology, access to technology. This is what the situations about the MSMEs.
Thank you. No, I'm very curious. I mean, one of the things we've been doing a lot of research and work is on, the adoption of digitization in Nepal. Now, if you look at the past 9 months, the way TikTok actually takes up nearly a quarter of our bandwidth, and people even in the remotest villages are using TikTok. I see, people are using YouTube to cook, upload things. So people are using Viber and WhatsApp and other platforms to send out things. Facebook has become literally an alternative as a news source. So in that, is there some opportunity you see for an institution like FNCSI to see this behavioral changes in people, how we can use this positively, these behavioral changes, and to see that how can we integrate this into digital finance? So before I go to Amit, if you could just think of it and answer that. Jagannath, do you see the possibility of this? Do you agree that there has been a transformation in people's behavior, as in terms of accessing digital platform? And is there a possibility that somebody who gets very used to using TikTok and who can make videos on TikTok can also put up things on sale on Viber and on WhatsApp and on Facebook or Instagram on other platforms? Do you see that happening?
Yes, yes, we see these kinds of things is happening in the remote area also. The people have access to mobile phones and smartphones. So that is the what penetrations of smartphone is increasing. So in these years, so we see that. But if you talk about again, the MSME in the industrial sectors, so they have they also can be said that unorganized sectors. They don't have account systems. They don't have proper account systems. They don't have most of them don't have proper account systems and other business services also. So they still have little problems in the access to financial technology. But having said that, we don't need to be pessimistic. We must be optimistic with with the efforts of all the stakeholders. We can do some things to make changes in the behaviors also.
Thank you, Jagannath. I know, Amit, I'm coming back to you. So maybe, I mean, for someone, we are talking about digital finance, and you are doing, typical payment solutions. So if you could really see how payment solutions are being, used by MSMEs, and if there are some very concrete examples that are, sort of this is being broadcasted through YouTube, and there people would be watching this later. People can learn about some of the payment solutions that will be useful for SMEs, and what are some of the real life examples you can give? Amit.
Thank you so much, Sujeev. Yes, past few months, I have some great learnings. And at the end of the day, one thing that we understood is indirectly everyone is doing a lending business. Like banks do it formally with all the collaterals and everything. But the businesses, for example, say Kirana Pashal, you know. So if someone is selling through Kirana shops, they are actually doing lending, and the entire business is running on credit. It is running like the manufacturers, they go to the shops, they put their stuffs in a kirana shop, and then follow up in a month or so to collect the payments, right? And the credit worthiness is being determined based on the sales of that shop, and the risk that the businessman is taking to put his goods in his shop. So why I'm telling this is, when we started Khalti, we just thought about payments. We just thought about utility payments, mobile recharge, and we thought that is the biggest use case, right? Because it was difficult for us to pay our electricity bills. It would take half a day, and even to buy a movie ticket, it would take 2 hours extra, right? So that's how Khalti started. But then gradually, when we interacted more with people, uh, the first issue was trust. uh, Earlier people even didn't trust bank. They always trusted cash because it had touch and feel. Gradually, like the banked population, they started trusting bank, but they didn't trust wallets, they didn't trust virtual money. So even my friends, if I tell them that I'll send you money in Khalti, they would say that what I will do about with the money in Khalti, you better give me cash or you send me in bank. So they didn't want money, that virtual money. But in pandemic we realized that people started trusting that also. Now my friends, if I tell them that I'll send you 3000 rupees in Khalti, they started accepting it. So that is one behavior change that we are seeing, but it is not at large. Then the biggest use case that we saw and that people needed was, they want to do banking easily, so more than mobile recharge or more than buying stuffs on a platform like Khalti, the bigger use case was sending money, where people want to, like, so example, my wife would buy something from a MSME, informal MSME, say a boutique, which is not registered, but they are selling something on Instagram, on Facebook, and then what she's going to buy, she will decide over WhatsApp and or call or whatever. But at the end, when she needs to send money for that, then fintech is coming in the place. Another use case that we saw, we tied up with a company called Puryao, which was a delivery company. So Puryao, what they did is they guaranteed same day delivery and same day payment collection. So it is just a logistics company. Surprisingly, like without any advertisement, they were getting 300 orders every day, and the orders were increasing 20% every day. It was like very surprising that a very new company, how, and people could trust that company with their money. Like every day, it was like first day it was collecting 1 million rupees, then it was collecting like 20% growth. So this was another thing that we realized, that these MSMEs, they want to sell online, sell through WhatsApp, Viber, Facebook, Instagram, and then they were looking for a easy channel to deliver their goods. So during pandemic in Nepal, a lot of logistics company opened, and the right way to collect the money. So why, having said this, last future that we see is we have to find a way to do lending to this informal sector, and it is a very tricky thing, like how to find the credit worthiness, how to access the risk, how to like give a collateral free loan to an informal sector which is not properly registered. And if we can do that, then I think this MSMEs will be really it will really give very good returns, but it has good risk. Anil ji must be knowing better about it. uh, and as a fintech company, we are also thinking in a way that how we can find credit worthiness of this informal sector, so that we can bridge between bank and this sector and empower lending. Now, it might require a lot of data analytics. It might require uh, iterative algorithms to find which one is easy. Like Nabil has recently launched phone loan. So phone loan is for employees, salaried employees. So salaried employees also still there is less risks because we have their salary accounts. So it is like giving a credit card, giving a phone loan, is something like giving a credit card. So still these are job holders, taxpayers, But in Nepal, a lot of them are not paying taxes in terms of income taxes. A lot of them are in the informal sector. Someone might be doing a momo thela, or someone might be selling a. Anilji gave an example of a fruit seller. So I was just trying to find some data that a fruit seller who comes to my house every day in a cycle, how much does he earn per month? Like we don't have dignity of labor in Nepal. We find that that person is just a fruit seller and selling on cycle. Surprisingly, he was earning 1 lakh rupees per month. His daily income was 3,500 rupees, like profit. And he is not registered and he's doing it. So if we can give loan to that person, so that he can sell like not 1 lakh but 2 lakh rupees, or he can earn 2 lakh rupees, then there can be a good growth. But there's no way to find the credit worthiness, and there's no way to handle that risk. So I think the next digital, um, there's one behavior change. People have started trusting banks. Like if I have money in bank, like I still have friends like who are well educated, but they would always put, like I don't have a lot of cash in my house. My money is in bank, but I have friends who always put 2-3 lakh rupees. Like a Patanjali is giving credit to this small kirana puzzles. That is kind of lending business, right? Everyone who is selling is doing lending business. How we can now how banks can intervene in that lending business and give loan of 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 4 lakh. Maybe the cooperative sector has cracked it better. I feel like I was the other day I was talking to a friend in Mahabodha, and I asked him like, do you guys don't have bank account? He says, no, I have 7 accounts in cooperative, but I am not keeping a bank account. And I said, why? Because the banks doesn't give me more interest. And here in Mahabodha, all the shops here have 7 or 8 cooperative account. And I said, what is your biggest problem? Say the biggest problem is going to the cooperative, and we don't want to go to banks. We want a solution where all the money transfers can happen without going anywhere. So that use case is growing, sending money to banks or sending money to cooperative. But the other use case that we all need to work together is how we can do better lending, and that will require a lot of trust, literacy, and taking risk on both sides. Yeah, so that has been my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are coming to the close of the session. I mean, this nearly 45 minutes has just passed. It's so interesting discussions. I think just on a closing round, maybe 2 minutes each, if each speaker can talk about what is that one thing you would like to do, and you have other collaborators that you would like to work in your sector that would help in furthering of the fintech world, in the fintech world. So if you'd start with that, we'll start with Shrishti to say, women entrepreneurs, home-based workers, what can happen in the fintech world? Or if you were given the charge to do it, so what is that one thing you can do? We can do.
Thank you. Well, what I can do? In this panel, I would want to say that yes, we talked about creditworthiness, but I completely trust our members, our home-based workers. And when I talk about home-based workers, these are women who are not even micro-entrepreneurs. We do the training, we do the hand-holding for them to become micro-entrepreneurs. So for them, if we could use fintech to get group collaterals, that would be wonderful. And we would want to focus on private-public partnerships in future. And this is the right, doing it digitally, doing it online. This is the best time in a way where we are all connected. Right now, this festival is happening and we are connected from 40 different cities, I believe. So that way, looking at the positive side, gaining trust in the other person is most needed, I feel. And in order to take the quantum leap, we have to think out of the box. We have to think out of the box, and we have to, take the risk. Yeah, thank you.
Jagannath, quickly, your one suggestion, what FNSCI or would like to do in furthering fintech? So
FNCSI thank you. From FNCSI side, on behalf of FNCSI, I just want to say that so we request all partners like banks, financial institutions, banks, and then fintech service providers like Khalti, and private private organizations like FNCSI, entrepreneurs come together and make some plans to educate and to provide some what technology know-how this MSMEs, so that this can be the what users friendly, MSMEs friendly, who do not have the what like formal education. So they are just doing their businesses in their own way, on in their own traditional way. So these are the what latest technology, and that might be the new for this MSMEs. So from FNCSI, I just want to add how these MSMEs can have these services, this new latest technology, modern technology, because most of the MSMEs who have the their industries in the rural areas, as far from the even the district headquarters, must have the knowledge and educations for them. Thank you so much, Jagannath. Anil, what's your final parting words? Something that you see that you are very hopeful about in the world of SMEs and fintech?
I think now the big banks, the commercial banks, as was rightfully said by Amit, we need to see what is the cooperatives are doing that is attracting all the MSMEs towards them, and see how we can now bring them more to the formal sector. And for this, I think the one thing we need to all work towards building that ecosystem now. No one player can say, I can do this together. We need the Jagannath-jis, the Shrishti-jis to bring their institutions and their individuals into this space. We need the Amit-jis to bring in the fintech innovation and entrepreneurship into this as well. We need the big banks to bring in the confidence that we bring to the table, to the market. No problem, we are there. If Nabil is there, then people will say, okay, that's fine. We're willing to go with this because we trust this bank, and they're not going to do anything, whether you're the person who is selling the goods or you're the person who's buying the goods or services. So we need to now build the ecosystem. COVID, this pandemic has opened the door, whether we step through it and actually do something with it, or as you said, sit in the back and look for subsidies and ways to fleece some donor or some government agency by making this the case study as to how it is we are so pidit and we need help from everybody. If we go that way, we will continue to be where we are. But if we use this opportunity to say, okay, let's build that ecosystem, let's all work together so that digitization is nothing to do with the pandemic. But say 5 years down the line, when we look back, we'll say, wow, thank God for COVID. Look at this now. We have Pashmina sellers in Kathmandu selling in New York. We have our Mustanko apples being sold in Doha, all being done online without middlemen. The whole problem we have is the middlemen, and digitization cuts out the middleman if we get the right ecosystem going. And that's what I think we need to do.
Thank you, Anil. Amit, any final words you have?
So, yeah, top level, yes, we all need to build the ecosystem together. If I break it down, a few things that I really want to see in Nepal immediately is having a national ID and everything connected with that national ID, which it also means that a centralized KYC for all the banks, so that this can give us right status of any individual, where we can then jump into digital finance, financial inclusion, lending, and then empower them to do more business, create more jobs in Nepal, stay in Nepal, and do more business here. And yes, for that, the ecosystem, everyone has to come together, be it banks, fintechs, cooperatives. As a wallet, when Khalti started, it was very challenging for us. In 3 years, 4 years, like, banks were not integrating with us. We had to run to banks for months and months. Still, we are yet to integrate with Nabil Bank. We are still waiting. Nabil Bank will welcome us someday, and maybe.
Thank you, Amit. I think I'll have to cut you off here because I've been given a message from the organizers. This has been a super
we need to
session.
build the ecosystem together. Yes, sir.
Yes, I think we all will work together. I think this is a beginning. Thank you, Singapore FinTech Festival and UNCDF, for this opportunity to share this Nepal session. At Nepal Economic Forum, we are launching our Center for Digital Transformation in 2021, and we would ensure that this conversations would continue. Thank you very much, panelists, for your valuable time and insights, and look forward to staying in touch and working together on unleashing Nepal's digital world. Thank you.